Hello everyone! So today I'm going to read you chapters 9 and 10 of the further adventures of the Robber Hotzenplotz. Chapter 36 Buttons. Kasper and Seppel were delighted with the way they had managed to trick Hotzenplotz. They felt quite sure the message in the bottle had made him fall into their trap. That evening they got Grandmother to lock them up in the fire station. This was an essential part of their plan, because the fire station could only be locked from outside. Grandmother took away the key and wished them good luck. "Now, mind you don't miss. That man is capable of anything. If it wasn't such a good plan, I'd be really scared about you." To tell the truth, Grandmother was scared, though she did not show it. On her way home, she went to visit Mrs. Miller next door, so as to keep her mind off Kasper and Seppel. Mrs. Miller gave her tea and iced cakes, and then the two old ladies began to gossip. Since they both talked at once, neither of them got bored. The time simply flew past, and when Grandmother finally got up to leave, it was quite late. There was a light on in the living room of her house, and she found Chief Inspector Dimplemoser sitting on the sofa, wrapped in the bedspread. He did not seem particularly happy. "Where on earth have you been all this time, for goodness sake?" "Why, what's that to do with you?" "I could have been back on duty hours ago if you'd come straight back from the fire station. There, look at that." His uniform, freshly cleaned and pressed, was lying on the bureau by the sofa. "The minute you'd gone, the doorbell rang," said Mr. Dimplemoser. "And there was the boy from the cleaners with a parcel under his arm. The boss's compliments, and since it was for me, they'd worked overtime." "Fancy that," said Grandmother. "Isn't that wonderful? There now, see what can be done if you put a bit of pressure on people. What I don't understand is why you're still sitting around half-dressed. Aren't you going to put on your uniform?" Mr. Dimplemoser looked at her reproachfully. "It's my buttons," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "The cleaners cut them all off." He pointed to a paper bag lying beside his uniform. "I'd have sewn them on long ago if I knew where you keep your sewing things." Grandmother got out her needle case, her thimble, and a reel of strong black thread. Then she sewed Mr. Dimplemoser's buttons on his uniform, all 36 of them. First on the trousers, then on the coat, down the front, on the pockets, on the cuffs and the collar, and the epaulettes. It took some time. Grandmother didn't hold with doing a rush job. "I'm sewing them on as fast as I can and as firmly as possible," she said. "And much as I'd like to oblige you, I can't go any faster." Finally, the 36th button was sewn into place. Mr. Dimplemoser heaved a sigh of relief. He got dressed, put on his helmet, and fastened on his sword. "Grandmother," he said, twirling his moustache, "you have no idea how grateful I am to you. At last I feel like a member of the human race again. Now, I'm off to the fire station as fast as I can go. Let's hope Kasper and Seppel haven't bungled it. Catching robbers is not child's play." He strode off. Outside the door, he mounted his bicycle and was just about to ride away when Grandmother came running out of the house. "Chief Inspector!" she cried. "Chief Inspector Dimplemoser!" "Well, what is it? Can't you see I'm in a hurry?" "The key, Chief Inspector Dimplemoser. Don't you want the key?" "What key, for goodness sake?" "The key to the fire station." "Why didn't you say so before? Give it to me. Every second counts. Goodbye." "Goodbye, and good luck, Chief Inspector." Grandmother stood in the doorway until the red backlight of the bicycle had disappeared into the darkness. "It really is a great comfort to know that he's on his way to help Kasper and Seppel," she thought. "Come on in." Inside the fire station it was pitch dark. Kasper had positioned himself to the right of the doorway, and Seppel was on the left. They were both armed with fire extinguishers. "I wonder whether Hotzenplotz will come," Seppel asked for the 157th time, and as usual Kasper replied, "Of course he will. You don't think he's going to let a buried treasure slip through his fingers, do you?" Seppel chuckled to himself. A pity see, it's so dark in here. I'd like to see his silly face when we knock him over the head with our fire extinguishers." "Shh!" Caspar interrupted in excitement. "Someone is coming." Sure enough, they could hear someone bicycling over the marketplace and leaning a bike up against the wall. Hotzenplotz with a bicycle? "He must have stolen one," Caspar whispered. There was a knock at the door. "Are you still in there?" a voice whispered. Caspar and Seppel kept as quiet as mice. They were not such fools as to give themselves away and fall into Hotzenplotz's trap. Not they. "Why don't you answer me? It's me, Dimplemoser. Wait a moment, I'm coming in to join you." "You just come on in," thought Caspar. "You don't seem to know that Chief Inspector Dimplemoser has been in bed at our house ever since dinner time yesterday." Outside, a key was fitted into the lock and turned twice. Caspar and Seppel, holding their breath, raised their fire extinguishers. Cautiously, someone opened the door and put his head in. In the moonlight, they could see that it must be Hotzenplotz, because just as they expected, he was wearing Chief Inspector Dimplemoser's police uniform and helmet. "Come on in!" Caspar knocked the helmet off with his fire extinguisher, and Seppel did the rest. "There, so much for him. Now what? Now we take his uniform off and fetch the hose." Their prisoner was lying face down, motionless. With Seppel's help, Caspar took off his uniform, also his shoes and socks, of course. Then they wrapped the hose all around him from top to toe and planted an empty bucket over his head. "He's getting the same treatment as Chief Inspector Dimplemoser," explained Caspar. "That's right," Seppel agreed. The fire station door was open, and the moon shone in to give them light. Caspar and Seppel dragged their prisoner to the back corner of the fire station, the exact spot in between the wall and the fire engine where Mr. Dimplemoser had lain. "He'll never get out of this on his own," said Caspar. "I'll nip off home with the stolen clothes. You stay here on guard." "Right," said Seppel. "I'll keep my fire extinguisher handy, just in case, and if Hotzenplotz tries anything—" But at this point he was interrupted in mid-sentence. Someone outside had slammed the fire station door shut. Now they were both in the dark again. They heard the click of the key turning in the lock. Once, twice. "Hey there!" cried Caspar. "What's going on? There are people in here!" He beat on the door with his fists and kicked it. "Open up! Open up!" The only answer he got was a roar of laughter from outside the barred window. The friends whirled around. Framed in the window, they saw a helmeted head standing out clearly against the bright night sky. Another helmeted head. "Well, how are you two bottle postmen doing? Ha 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 ha!" Caspar and Seppel felt as if they were in the middle of a nightmare. Could that be Hotzenplotz at the window? Hadn't they just finished tying up Hotzenplotz in a hose belonging to the fire brigade? "So, ha ha, you didn't reckon on this, huh?" Yes, it really was Hotzenplotz. There couldn't be two with that voice. "You'll have to do better than that if you want to capture me. I'm no fool, you know. I'm an experienced robber, I am. And you're a pair of born idiots. Ha 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 ha!" Caspar and Seppel felt that their heads were spinning. But, we've, stammered Seppel. We've only just hit you on the head with a fire extinguisher, and then we tied you up with the hose," said Caspar. "Me?" Hotzenplotz inquired. "Well, it couldn't have been me. I don't let anyone tie me up, let me tell you. Least of all you two. You'd better drop off to sleep now, and I hope you have sweet dreams. Dreams of buried treasure in a certain fire station, maybe, or Caspar's grandmother." "You leave my grandmother out of it," cried Caspar indignantly. "Dear me, no, I can't do that," said the robber Hotzenplotz. "I have plans of my own for grandmother. I'm just about to start work on her. Ha 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 ha!" What a wicked robber. and poor Sergeant Dimplemoser. We'll have to find out next time what happens to poor Sergeant Dimplemoser and grandmother. Bye everyone!